In the village called Ijibu Ode in Lagos State, there's one church called Living Faith. Reverend John had been the pastor of that church for over a decade. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. He was a kind and compassionate leader, loved by his congregation. One day, he announced to his church members that he would be traveling to his village for a visit. "I'll be gone for a few days," he said. "I need to see my family and friends back home. It's been a while since I visited, and I feel it's time to reconnect with my roots." But his church members were worried. "Please don't go, Pastor," they said. "It's not safe. There are rumors of accidents on the road, and we can't afford to lose you." Reverend John smiled and reassured them. "I trust in God's protection," he said. "I'll be fine. Your prayers will keep me safe. Besides, I need to visit my family and friends. They need to see me, and I need to see them." Despite their concerns, Reverend John was determined to make the trip. He packed his bags, said goodbye to his congregation, and set off on the long journey to his village. As he drove, he couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and nostalgia. He had grown up in the village, and it held many fond memories for him. He was looking forward to seeing his family and friends again and to sharing stories of his experiences as a pastor. When he arrived at the village, he was greeted with warm smiles and open arms. His family and friends were overjoyed to see him, and the village was filled with laughter and celebration. Reverend John spent the next few days visiting with his loved ones, sharing meals and stories, and reminiscing about old times. He also took the opportunity to preach at the local church, sharing his message of hope and salvation with the villagers. But not everyone was happy about Reverend John's visit. His stepmother, who had always been cold towards him, was not pleased to see him. She had never accepted him as her own, and her resentment towards him had grown over the years. Unbeknownst to Reverend John, his stepmother had been seeking the help of a local witch who lived in the nearby forest. The witch was known for her dark powers, and Reverend John's stepmother had asked for her help in causing harm to him. As Reverend John was driving back to his village after visiting some friends, he suddenly lost control of his car. The vehicle skidded off the road and crashed. Reverend John was shaken, but miraculously, he was unharmed. As he stepped out of the wreckage, he saw a figure approaching him. It was an old man who introduced himself as a passerby. The old man helped Reverend John to safety and then disappeared into thin air. Reverend John was stunned. He realized that the old man was an angel sent by God to save him from harm. He fell to his knees and gave thanks to God for sparing his life. When Reverend John returned to his church, he shared his incredible story with his congregation. He told them about the accident and how God had sent an angel to save him. The church erupted in praise and worship. Reverend John's congregation was amazed by his story, and they were reminded of the power of prayer and faith. Reverend John instructed his church members to pray always and to trust in God's protection. He reminded them that God is always with them, even in the darkest of times. "We must never underestimate the power of prayer," he said. "We must always trust in God's goodness and mercy. He is our rock, our refuge, and our salvation." From that day on, Reverend John's church was filled with a new sense of purpose and faith. The congregation prayed fervently, knowing that God was always listening and always ready to intervene in their lives. Reverend John's journey had been a test of faith, but it had also shown him the incredible power of God's love and protection. He was grateful for the experience, and he knew that he would always trust in God, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As for Reverend John's stepmother, she was shocked and ashamed when she heard about the accident and how God had saved Reverend John's life. She realized that her evil plans had been foiled, and she was filled with remorse for her actions. She went to Reverend John and begged for his forgiveness. Reverend John, being the kind and compassionate person that he was, forgave her and welcomed her back into his life. From that day on, Reverend John's stepmother was a changed person. She became a devout Christian, and she spent the rest of her life making amends for her past mistakes. This is Reverend John's story spread like wildfire, and it inspired many people to put their faith in God. It reminded them that God is always in control. Don't forget to subscribe and comment what do you learn from this story.